Thank you for joining us on Spot Colts Radio. We're back again for Questions with the Enemy, Steelers edition. My name's Matt Danely. I'm your host. We got a good show for you tonight. We're going to be going over some things with our Steelers lead writer and AFC North divisional manager from Pro Football Spot, Jon Ledyard. Jon, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. Excited to talk about this matchup between the Colts and the Steelers. Been some great games over the years between these two teams. Excited for another one this week.
Yes, me too. Very good to have you here. I'm glad we're going to be able to get through this and hopefully answer some questions for some people that may be wondering on either side of the coin here what to expect this Sunday. Let's jump right into it. I got one of my questions for you is obviously going to involve Le'Veon Bell. We all know that he's going to be a major factor in some way, shape, or form this Sunday. With him being a top five rusher to this point, and last year Blunt pretty much gashed the Colts in the divisional round of the playoffs. With those two in the backfield, you expect them to have a big night, or do you expect them to struggle against a much improved Colts defense?
I tell you what, as I was writing about this matchup this week, I really don't think that the Steelers have faced an offense like the Colts, but I'm also not sure they faced a defense like the Colts, and that's something that not a lot of people are talking about. But I
Hmm.
think it's something that's really true about Indianapolis when you look at them right now. They don't have necessarily a lot of household names across their defense, but that's about as potent a unit as you'll find across the league right now. Starts with those big guys up front, and especially the way guys like Arthur Jones and Corey Redding are playing. I mean, doing a heck of a job this season. Corey Redding's having himself a Pro Bowl season. That is going to be the toughest defensive line I think the Steelers have had to face this season. That's saying a lot because they faced Carolina and they faced a good defensive line in Baltimore. But I
Hmm.
really think that this Colts defensive line is going to be the toughest task they've had in terms of moving guys off the ball, which they've done a pretty good job of all year.
Hmm.
I don't know that many Steeler rushes have gone for negative yards this year. We usually the average is very strong. They've usually been able to get good push off the snap, and I think that that's something that they have to be ready for that challenge on Sunday because the Colts are going to be one of the toughest teams to move off the ball. That being said, I really think that Le'Veon Bell is one of those threats that doesn't come along very often. And I wouldn't have said this about him coming out of college, where he was kind of a slow, plodding back at Michigan State, and
Hmm.
definitely never saw the quickness and the lateral agility that you see now from him. But he's worked very hard to get to the point where he is now, made himself a complete player. I mean, it's as a receiver, it's as a rusher, it's absolutely as a pass protector. He's able to be used in every package the Steelers have, and they flex him out wide, especially over the last two games, almost as often as he's in the backfield. So his versatile usage is probably going to give the Colts fits, but as a pure rusher, I think he and Blunt are in for their toughest test of the season against that Colts front.
Yeah, I have to agree. Watching especially Le'Veon Bell, I didn't expect him to be where he's at in the pro game. To be quite honest with you, similar to what you touched on, really didn't. But watching him, um, he's a stud. There's just no two ways about it. He, like you
Yeah.
said, he's multifaceted. The guy can go out wide. He can come out of the backfield. He's extremely dangerous when he has the ball in his hands, especially in space, in the flats or downfield, anywhere really. I do think the Colts will do a good job of stopping him in between the tackles. Like you said, the big guys up front, Zach Kerr, he's an undrafted free agent. He's been phenomenal this year. Ricky Jean Francois is probably having as good a comeback year as you can after kind of, you know, I don't want to say necessarily laying an egg, but he did not
Yeah.
impress too many people last season. And he's really done a fantastic job filling in for Art Jones since he's been injured. We may have him back, which can only bolster that line. I personally would just rather him not come back yet. To be quite honest with you, I don't want somebody to come back and have a nagging injury throughout the season, especially a newcomer. It seems
Right.
like that's kind of a trend. With Laurent Landry last year, he came in and he was gone 4 or 5 games. Now he's gone a couple games this year for PED
Right.
suspension, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one of my favorite matchups to watch, Le'Veon, and especially when the Colts have had as much difficulty as they have covering the running backs and the tight ends, especially the backs out of the backfield. Josh McNary's kind of, not having not having a great year
Mhm.
covering. He's doing pretty well in between the tackles as far as his tackling skills and stuff like that. He's just not covering very well at all. And DeQuell Jackson's been pretty bad. Although last week against the Bengals, they did a phenomenal job against Gio Bernard,
Mhm.
and I just thought that was the big change in that, and hoping that that's going to be the way it looks from here on out. You just can't give those guys all that space because they just run all over you, as was seen the first half of the first week with Peyton Manning just eating them alive, letting those tight ends and running backs go free. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely agree with you on that. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. It's one that I'm very interested to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll definitely be one of those that even if you're not a Colts or a Steelers fan, it'll be
Hmm.
worth watching just to see how a good defensive coordinator like Greg Minuski, how can he handle the different situations that the Steelers are going to throw at him with Le'Veon Bell. So it'll be interesting to see. And we talk about good defensive coordinators, and it only seems natural to segue into Dick LeBeau and the struggles the
Absolutely.
Steelers have had defensively. And, it's been such a good unit over the years, but the secondary through poor drafting and some poor free agent signings or lack of signings in the case of Keenan Lewis have
Hmm.
really hampered that unit. And we got to the point last week where Cortez Allen's benched. Bryce McCain, who was pretty much an afterthought in Houston, is now starting with William Gay, and Ike Taylor's still out, although he did practice today, which is encouraging, but I would be surprised to see him play this week against Indianapolis. But
Hmm.
he's aging and not himself either. Now they have to match up against Colts receivers that are talented across the board, and you have a running back who can catch the ball. You have two tight ends, as disappointing as Kobe Fleener's been, and then
Hmm.
Doyle we talk about too, in addition to Dwayne Allen. Weapons all across the board for Houston, and you have a guy like Andrew Luck throwing them the ball. At
Hmm.
this point this season, looking at the Colts offense, and obviously the numbers they put up, first in the NFL in total yards per game, first in passing yards, Andrew Luck's first in passing yards across the league. Is Andrew Luck moved at this point into that elite, that upper echelon conversation of quarterbacks where he is legitimately in the conversation for best quarterback in the NFL? Or is he still kind of at a point in his game with some of the risks that he takes and some of the throws that he makes that maybe are a little ill-advised at times? Is he still in the point in his career where he's a little bit outside of that elite section of quarterbacks with the Peyton Mannings and the Aaron Rodgers?
Hmm. Um, it depends on where you go with elite as far as what kind of a stopping point you have. If I'm going to say elite, that means you got 32 teams, and you've got a quarterback for each team, sometimes more than one in some cases. I'm going to go with elite being top three in the league, and I'm not going to say that Andrew Luck's a top three quarterback in the league. Uh, I think Peyton is the best quarterback today. I won't argue with anybody telling me that Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback, especially the best. I don't want to say young quarterback, but the best quarterback that's still got plenty of miles left on him. It's as much as any Colts fan hates Tom Brady, it's impossible to say that he's garbage. You know,
Yeah.
it's really just ridiculous when people will go, "Oh, he's dumpster fire now," blah blah blah. Yeah, that's not the case. Tom Brady is a top three quarterback, and he probably will be until his. I mean, he has nothing to work with, and even less now with
Yeah.
Ridley going down. He
Right.
has absolutely no weapons whatsoever. So if I'm going to put Luck in there, I'm going to put him. I think I can put him behind Breeze at four. And I kind of have Breeze and Brady there flip flopping at that third and fourth spot, to be honest with you. And then I got Luck at five. I he does make some of the most ill-advised passes that you have ever seen, but it's
Mhm.
usually you cheer when you see them drop it and they don't get a pick because he's not going to do that again.
Mhm.
At least not in that game. It seems like
Right.
there's always one of those a game where he's thrown into quadruple coverage and you just have no idea why he's doing it. But other than that, he's not. Very seldom is he going to make the same mistake twice. He is an elite quarterback, being that he's in his third year and he's head and shoulders above where, in my opinion, several of the current top five, top six, seven quarterbacks have been after 3 years. Some of them start fast and then kind of level off, similar to Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, just as a blank comparison, in general, you see how Ben was so fortunate to kind of move into the system that he did when he did.
Right.
That team needed a quarterback that could manage the game and get them to a Super Bowl, and the rest of the team was pretty filled out.
Mhm.
And Luck's in a bit of a different spot where he had to basically, and excuse me, for the most point, has had to carry them for the first 3 years, at least two, and now you're starting to see the defense and everything move up. There's no doubt in my mind that he is at least, or no less than, and no more probably either, than a year away from actually being a top three quarterback. Because if any of those top guys take any step back, uh, then he's definitely in there. He makes all the throws. He's very smart. The one thing that I had a knock on him was his ability to change the play at the line of scrimmage. Wasn't overly ecstatic with the way he did it or how he did it. I tell you, if there's anything you can say that he's grown in the past 5 weeks, that's one of them. He's done a phenomenal job at the line of scrimmage the last 5 weeks, getting himself and his team into good plays, and you see somebody moving that far up in the evolution of their game in just 5 weeks, and it's hard not to notice and just sit there and watch and somewhat be in awe. So I won't say that he is an elite being that I consider elite top three. But man, he is knocking on the door, and he's only probably a few games from kicking the door in.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I absolutely agree. I think that if you look at quarterbacks this season, through 7 weeks of the season, I would say that if I were going to rank them, and I mean, Brady's been great and he's really bounced back. Breeze has not been nearly as bad as your average analyst is kind of suggesting he is now. He's getting
hmm
killed in New Orleans. He's not getting much help either. And really, Sean Payton's play calling, not really sure what's going on there. He's always one of my favorite play callers, and he's really gotten conservative this season. So, but that's another topic. But I think if you look at quarterbacks this season, you talk about Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, and the way Philip Rivers has played in the
hmm
conversation for the top three. If those three are top three, and Luck is just outside of that, I think I'd put him right there 4 or 5 for this season. So yeah, elite's a relative term for sure, and that's a good point by you because a lot of times that term's thrown around, and some people consider it top seven, other people consider it top three. I'm much more along the line of thinking that you are like elite's the best of the best. Period. So while
right,
I think Luck is just outside of that right now, I definitely think by the end of the season, and as every week passes, he's getting closer to that. And people will complain about, oh, Andrew Luck makes this throw per game, like he makes a couple throws per game that make you scratch your head. But don't all the great quarterbacks? I feel like Peyton Manning, when he came into the league, man,
mm,
he threw a ton of interceptions. I mean, he
yes,
was always throwing the ball. And Brett Favre, the same way. Like lots of great quarterbacks. Steve Young when he first started, but they have the backbone to take shots down the field and into
hmm
tight windows that a lot of quarterbacks, and I love Alex Smith. I'm just saying him as an example, but a
hmm
lot of quarterbacks like Alex Smith won't take that shot. A
yeah,
quarterback like Joe Flacco won't take that shot. You know what I
hmm
mean? So the
yeah,
ceiling is higher for Luck just because of his ability and his desire to make plays that a lot of quarterbacks would say it's not there. But Luck
yeah,
says in his head, I can make that throw. And maybe he doesn't all the time, but don't you want a guy under center that's going to take that shot rather than a
right,
guy going to pass it up and check down at every opportunity? I mean,
hmm
look, the Colts are first in the NFL in total yards per game, and as good as their running game's been, as good as Ahmad Bradshaw's been, and I applaud Pep Hamilton for staying consistent and sticking with the running game. But a
hmm
huge part of that's Andrew Luck and his ability to wing the ball up downfield, give his receivers a shot to make a play, and drive a ball with velocity into a tight window and hope it gets there.
yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. And that kind of speak. You get into talking about Luck's, one or two bad throws, and you just think, man, how many of those have been tip balls, or how many of those have been balls that he just maybe meant to throw, started to throw, didn't want to throw, but the ball was already gone. The Steelers defense, while maybe not being, let's see, the most dominant, group that they've been, as far as aging and a little bit of speed, coming lacking and stuff like that. I guess they are still, however, a very opportunistic group, especially this season. Do you think that they can force more than two turnovers Sunday against the Colts? And that's the reason I ask is because the Colts have had some issues with turning the ball over this year, which is so strange. Whereas last year it was start slow, then come back. This year it's start fast and hold them down. And last year there was hardly any turnovers. They only had 12, I believe, for the season. They've already surpassed that mark from this year. In fact, they've got, I believe, 10 fumbles and they've lost 5 or 6 of them. Do you expect the Steelers defense to be able to turn over the Colts? And which way?
I think that if you look at Pittsburgh, you obviously look at what they've struggled with the past couple of years, and last year they were terrible in turnovers. I don't remember the exact numbers at the moment, but for a long time, several weeks in the season, they didn't have any turnovers at all defensively, and that's one of the most important statistics in the league. I was just talking with one of my other writers, Anthony DeFeo, earlier today on his article, and he did a nice piece for Pro Football Spot on turnovers. And when the Steelers win the turnover battle, I mean, this season when they win the turnover battle, they're 3-0. I mean, that tells you just about everything you need to know in terms of how dominant they can be when they're turning over the football defensively. And when you have a bad defense, that just at this point, whether it's, I mean, it was age in some areas in the past. They've gotten definitely younger and faster, which I'll talk about in a second. You really have to rely on the ability to turn over the football. And I think Dick LeBeau knows that, and I think that when they acquired talent in the draft and in the free agency this past year, they looked at guys who could do that. I mean, Mike Mitchell's a guy who they signed as a safety out of Carolina who can really get after the football, both with his speed and his ball hawking ability. We haven't really seen that on display much this year as he's been out of position a lot, way more than we'd like to see as fans and analysts, but also has the ability to strip the football, which we saw against Houston, stripping DeAndre Hopkins late in the game. Huge turnover. Troy Polamalu recovers. So the ability to create opportunistic plays is definitely something Mike Mitchell brings with a hard-hitting presence and a guy who's going to try and strip the football at every turn. He's going to let you down in a lot of other ways in terms of his coverage, even though he has the speed to usually make up for it, but he's way too aggressive and will jump out of position at times. So it's something to watch for as they face Indy in terms of winning the turnover battles. You got to be in the right position to make plays. And Luck's as good as any quarterback in the league at moving to safety with his eyes, pumping, looking in a different direction, and getting Mitchell to move. And so if Mitchell's going to jump and react to all that all the time, Luck's going to have a field day picking them apart with T.Y. Hilton behind the defense. But I think overall they have the ability to turn teams over, and that's increased kind of as we've seen the season go on. And the Colts have definitely put the ball in risky situations at times. Richardson's fumbled, Bradshaw's fumbled. They've had their issues with ball security. The best point probably for the Colts, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, and it's one of my favorite statistics and things about the Colts this season, is the offensive line has kept Luck clean in the pocket, which I think has allowed for less pressure and hits on him and less chances of him fumbling the football. But I think if there's a chance to make a play, it's definitely in Luck trying to force the ball into a tight window and the Steelers being able to close on it and make a good play on the ball. And that's definitely going to be an opportunity they're probably going to have a couple times on Sunday just with the way Luck plays quarterback, and they're going to have to be on their toes if they want to take advantage of those plays because the window is there and it's tight, and when Luck sees it, he's going for it. So if they want to make a play on the ball, they're definitely going to be have to be ready. But I think those opportunities will be there for them, and they're getting better at it. I still wouldn't say it's their forte defensively, but I definitely think that it's something they have the opportunity to do against Indianapolis and really could sway a game in which Indianapolis is probably definitely going to look to possess the ball, number one in the NFL in time of possession. And if the Steelers can take away some of those opportunities to possess the ball, maybe they alter Indy's game plan a little bit to the point where they're doing things they typically wouldn't do in a game where they're trying to control the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that the Steelers were, I'm not sure what rank they are specifically, but I know that they were above 32 minutes a game in their time in possession as well. So, I mean, they're holding the ball as well. So, I mean, really, it just depends on, it all comes down to who executes better and does pick up those crucial third downs. Um, the one I think I'm not quite with it this year with all the fumbling and stuff like that because there was so few of them last
Yeah.
year. I guess I just don't assume that they're going to fumble. So it's hard for me to really gauge of where they're going to do something. Luck throws picks every now and again. You rarely does it hurt. It's strange because what last week against Cincinnati, the Colts lost the turnover battle and won 27 to zilch.
Yeah.
They lost the turnover battle against Baltimore and won by a touchdown, and actually should have been by about 2 or 3 touchdowns. It's so awkward this year. Typically, that's the way it goes. You lose the turnover battle, you lose the game, and especially if you have anybody being successful on offense as your opponent. And the Colts this year, it's just not been that way. It's really awkward and really strange that they can it's almost their ability to rise above their turnovers after they happen. They're getting guys out on third down at an amazing clip, only allowing 26% of third down conversions to be successful. That is insane, and just that's something you don't see from an Indianapolis defense. And I'm very glad that we are seeing it right now. Another thing, uh, as far as the defense goes over in Pittsburgh, as well as with the absence of Ike Taylor. Uh, you know, how do you feel they're going to be able to match up? It's a good possibility Reggie won't play. He might play.
Mhm.
His elbow apparently is giving him some fits or whatever. So I'm going to basically say he won't play. So that leaves Akeem Nicks and Dante Moncrief as his sub,
Mhm.
and probably likely as a 2 or 3 receiver, depending on where they move Ty around to. Do you think that makes a sizable difference? Whoever will be picking those guys up.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you take a guy like Reggie Wayne out of a game, I mean, I don't care what people say about getting older or whatever. I mean, that guy's one of the best receivers in the game. I mean, I just think that he's been able to overcome age and injuries, being injured last year. And man, I'm surprised to hear that you think he'll miss the game. I didn't realize his elbow was that bad at this point, but that's definitely going to be a blow for the Colts. I mean, he's a guy who's played through just about everything. I mean, how many games has he missed in his career? Just last
Yeah,
season,
right.
maybe one his rookie year. I think
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
crazy.
he's
So
very durable. Just to hear them talk about it like as the way they are, it makes me feel like he may not play, and I think that they're comfortable with their depth at wide receiver. So,
yeah, I mean, and not many teams, and it's not something we've said in the past about Indianapolis, especially last year when Wayne was injured and they were
hmm
going with all kinds of people at receiver. But I think really this year they've made some moves to be able to make sure they had talent around Luck, and it's really the first time that I feel like Ryan Griggson's done that, and I applaud him for that because I
hmm
think the first 2 years Luck was there, I was like, this guy's going to get killed behind that offensive line, and he has no one to throw the ball to. So
right.
I think that he saw that and he recognized it and was a little late for my liking, but I think he went out and made some really good moves. At least they
hmm
look good on paper. But man, I really thought a change of scenery would do wonders for Hakeem Nicks, but he's just not good. It's just plain and simple. He doesn't look like there's any urgency to his game when I watch him play, and I think that's my biggest issue with him. Do you see the same thing when you see him?
Yeah, I agree. You see him get those balls in the back of the end zone, a couple touchdowns here and there, where he's got 2 touchdowns, I think, this year, and he had 0 last year.
Right.
So I mean, you look at that, but he's not getting himself separation. You can see at the top of his routes. His routes are, I don't want to say sloppy, as in they're always sloppy, but there are a couple times I've seen him basically just they have been sloppy,
Yeah.
and you can't. You're looking to get time. You're looking to prove yourself in a 1-year contract. You can't afford to have sloppy routes. You can't afford to do anything but look your best when people basically are grading you right now to see if you're going to be the guy to come in and fill Reggie's shoes next
Yeah.
year if he decides to retire.
Right.
If not, you can pretty much kiss Indianapolis goodbye, and they're pretty much going to ride on Moncrief because I'm telling you, Moncrief's impressing a lot of people,
Mhm.
and he's making a lot of people turn their heads, especially that coaching staff. They're loving him, whereas he was getting snaps in last Sunday's game against Cincinnati that Nix ultimately should have been getting.
Mhm.
And there's something going on there to where Moncrief's impressing and Nix is just not, apparently.
Right, and there's been whispers. I know I've heard it, and you're probably more familiar with it, about Nick saying he wants to be more involved in the offense and doesn't get the ball enough. And I mean, you know as well as I do, Pagano is not a guy that is going to stand for that kind of talk in his locker room. That's your attitude, and you're not performing when you're given the opportunities. Boom, you're
Right.
going down the depth chart. A guy like Moncrief, sure, why not? I mean, coming out of the draft, as I'm also the draft coordinator for Pro Football Spot, and I pay real close attention to the wide receivers. Usually do their scouting reports every year, and Moncrief was a guy I wasn't as crazy about as some other receivers. I think he will struggle to get separation a little bit, and he really has to learn the intricacies of route running. He was asked to do a lot of vertical routes in college, and I don't think he really has the pure straight line speed to be able to translate that to the NFL. So he's going to have to learn. There'll be a learning curve with him, but I never want to see a guy like Reggie Wayne out of the lineup. But as an analyst, I'm really curious to see what Moncrief looks like with an increased snap count. I mean, I think you'll see the Steelers won't mix and match or won't match up one-on-one, I don't think, with T.Y. Hilton with anyone. I think they'll play whatever side he goes to. I think William Gay will be on the right side, and you'll see a lot of Bryce McCain and Cortez Allen on the left side. But, I mean, I think that Moncrief has the opportunity to be matched up against Cortez Allen a lot, for sure. If he lines up in the slot, I mean, they'll probably move T.Y. into the slot too, but I think Cortez Allen's a guy who's struggled mightily for the Steelers this year. I mean, it was a head-scratcher to me when they gave him a big contract extension before the season started. He didn't play great last year. But that's what you do. When you draft poorly, you're paying yourself into a corner, and you get to a situation where you're like, you know what, Ike Taylor's probably going to retire after this year or not be back in Pittsburgh. We have a situation where William Gay is getting older. We've let Keenan Lewis, one of the best corners to come through the program or through the organization, and years walk in free agency and go on to become the star corner that it was obvious he would be with the Saints. So we've let those opportunities pass us by, and now at this point, who are we going to have at cornerback next year if we don't bring Cortez Allen in for a big deal? So they give him a lot of money. Cortez plays terrible, and that's basically the story of Kevin Colbert as a general manager in a nutshell. But I digress. I think Cortez Allen is going to be matched up with Moncrief a lot. And while Allen's had a few bright spots this season, he's struggled a lot. He doesn't have click and close ability, especially to play in the slot. So Moncrief's kind of a good matchup for him because he's not the quickest guy, and Cortez really struggles with small, quicker receivers. But Moncrief's a big body. He will go up and get the football, and he can play a possession-type role as he learns more intricate route schemes. I'm really curious to see what kind of development he has if he gets a bigger role against Pittsburgh. They're going to have a heck of a time trying to cover those receivers. I mean, T.Y. is the guy to watch. He was one of my favorite players coming into the season. I thought he was going to have a huge year, and he's been incredible, and I think that's going to be the guy the Steelers are really going to have to try and key on. But the Colts are going to have some opportunities to win some battles. I'm going to be honest with you. The Pittsburgh secondary is bad.
Yeah.
And that's being kind.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you on that, although, and it kind of, I think it depends on your mindset. I wasn't really aware of Moncrief having speed before the draft, before they drafted him.
Yeah.
I didn't see a whole lot of it in his tape from college at Ole Miss. But I'll tell you, the few times that he's gotten the ball in space, man, he looks a lot faster than I thought he was. And as you said, he's a big dude, and he goes up to get the ball, which is what they're missing basically with Lavon Brazil and Derrick Rogers both being, kaputs. So,
Right.
I mean, he doesn't have the body makeup of those two guys as far as strength and size, but he's got that strength and size. He just doesn't look as much the part, I suppose.
Right.
Here's something that I wanted to ask you about. Everybody talks about mobile quarterbacks or quarterbacks being able to escape the pocket and extend plays. The Steelers have given up the fourth most sacks through 7 weeks. Can Ben have success staying clean against a Colts defense that is surging and pressuring and sacking the quarterback and covering downfield as well as any team in the league right now?
Yeah, it's definitely something that Pittsburgh has struggled with for just about as long as I've been alive. I mean, I was talking with a writer the other day, and he was telling me that Steelers haven't had a Pro Bowl tackle since Marvell Smith in 2004, and even that was a little bit of a questionable choice by the Pro Bowl selection. But they also, at the same time, on that note, haven't had a Pro Bowl offensive tackle before that since I think it was '89 or something like that. So it's been a long time, basically, where Pittsburgh has been without some really premier play at the tackle positions. And I think Indianapolis has the opportunity to take advantage. I mean, coming into the year, when I heard they were losing Robert Mathis, and then when he went out with the Achilles tear, I was seriously wondering who was going to rush the passer for the Colts. I mean, I honestly thought Werner was going to be a bust from day one, and all of a sudden the last couple of weeks, he looks like he could be legitimate. And that's exciting for Colts fans. I mean, they need a pass rusher who's going to take over when Robert Mathis retires. And Werner really looks like he's starting to get the hang of things, which I knew he was going to have a steep learning curve. I didn't expect him to be this good at any point in his career, really. So I'm excited to see the progress he's made to get to where he's at. I think Francois has played a heck of a season. You were mentioning that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He really has come out of nowhere. And those are two guys I didn't expect to produce, honestly, at all this season for Indianapolis. They've stepped up and done a nice job. Pittsburgh's going to have their hands full. One of the things they did best against Houston was protect Roethlisberger as the game went on. Early on, and Ben doesn't help this any because he holds the ball longer, and he's well known for that, and it's very accurate. He holds the ball too long, and it gets him into trouble a lot of the time. And he's ball security issues, too, because of holding the ball too long. But
Sure.
if the Steelers' offensive line can give him time like they did, I mean, his touchdown pass to Martavis Bryant, I talked about it today in my column, and I said that, when they pick up the blitz like that, Houston sends 7. They leave 4 guys in coverage for 3 receivers. The help always is going to go to Antonio Brown's side. You've got a one-on-one matchup that you can win down the field with Martavis Bryant. You can win down the field with Marcus Wheaton. But it comes with the blitz pickup. And luckily they have a back in Le'Veon Bell who's going to be great at it. He's great at it. And you got a tight end in Heath Miller who's one of the best in the league at it, as much as he struggled in terms of being a receiver at this point in his career. But great blocker. And the offensive line's done a better job as the year's gone on at picking up the blitz. It's not an elite unit for sure. It's definitely going to be something that from play to play is anybody's guess a little bit. But they're improving in terms of their vision and ability to pick up blitzes, so that's going to be a big talking point moving forward, I think. And kind of on the same note, as I transition to ask you kind of about the Colts offensive line, I mean, last 2 years, that was one of the sorriest units in the league. Luck was getting killed, and he did hold the ball too long sometimes, but there were definitely a lot of protection issues. I think at best people would have said Anthony Costanzo and Goster Cherilus are average offensive tackles. I've always kind of thought Goster Cherilus was a little bit better than people say, and Costanzo's struggled throughout his career, but he had ability always. They've really started to put it together, this unit, and with all the injuries to the interior offensive line before the season began even, it's really surprising. The Colts have been able to put together a great offensive line. Well, Andrew Luck's only been sacked 11 times this season. That's one of the better marks in the league. Talk about that a little bit. How have the Colts been able to really protect Andrew Luck, or is that a lot of him getting the ball out soon?
Well, I definitely don't think it's him getting the ball out soon. When they do that, it's mainly a wide receiver screen. Those tend to get blown up. I can't stand the amount of wide receiver screens. But to get to the line, even last year when the offensive line struggled, strangely enough, they were better with A.Q. Shipley at center when Sattel was out with an injury, and Costanzo was been really their most dependable lineman for the past couple years. And while he may not be on a Pro Bowl level previous to this year, he's definitely showing it now. Goster Cherilus actually last year played pretty well. I wouldn't say he was great, but he played pretty well. I was happy with his play as a free agent pickup. And this year he is really he's a sore spot in that line, to be honest with you. In protection, some games he will play, he'll do well, run blocking, but his pass protection is pretty spotty at best. Hugh Thornton's been okay when he's been in there. He's given up a couple sacks. I think that, and speaking of the center change, the Colts got A.Q. Shipley back this year, and he played the first few games and was one of the top-rated centers in the league. And then then they pulled him and gave the starting spot to Jonathan Harrison, an undrafted free agent out of Florida. And he had his first game starting was against Baltimore, and he had a couple shaky snaps and stuff like that. But he started the preseason, 3 out of the 4 preseason games with Luck, so they've got a bit of a rapport. And I'll tell you, he has been phenomenal in pass protection. It really starts there and kind of goes out. Like I said, Costanzo is playing fantastic. He dominated about 80% of his matchups Sunday against the Bengals. Just to watch him just maneuver people through and over other people, it was a beautiful thing to see. There was a touchdown run from Ahmad Bradshaw, and it was basically a counter play where Doyle come from right to left in motion, and then Doyle came back against over to the strong side where he initially started for his to pull block, and it was a counter, and Bradshaw basically had the same hole on both sides. He didn't even have to make it a counter. He could have run right down Costanzo's back and scored just as easily because Costanzo had dominated his matchup so much that he pushed his man into another guy, and he was on top of both of them in the end zone. It was impressive. And so when you go and rookie Jack Muhor, he's been a bright spot. He was a guy a lot of people scratched their heads with his draft pick, but he has done pretty stinking well. I'm pretty impressed with him as far as the fact that he is a rookie. He's he's one of those guys. He's a mauler
Yeah.
almost. I mean,
Yep.
he's a guy who has above average technique. Tends to forget about his technique sometimes, but when he does put the technique together and his strength, he's a very very effective at the line, and he opens up a bunch of holes, which in turn is hopefully he can get those. The line can get those holes opened up quickly to help Trent Richardson become more decisive. He's done better this year with that running behind this line. This line's helping him in a tremendous way, and they're keeping Luck clean. But last week he was sacked I think 4 times, and the pockets weren't clean. Luck was moving after about 2 seconds, and Luck's not getting he's not getting his lane to step up into to throw the ball. If he does, he's hitting the guard in the head with his hand or the football. So they've got to get better than they were last week as far as pass protection. But run blocking last week was their strong point. I thought they did a good job getting downfield, getting to the second level. Um, you saw Costanzo a couple times running downfield with Ahmad Bradshaw and Trent Richardson and getting some quality yards and getting some extra blocks picked up for him. I think that this line is just they're meshing well, especially when you have 2 rookies on your line. Hugh Thornton, who played some last year, um, and then you've got Gosder Cherilus, which is the one bookend, and Anthony Costanzo on the other end. I think Costanzo is the mainstay for this group. I think it's a good chance that they're looking for a replacement for Cherilus after this season.
Mm.
Um, but Xavier Nixon, he's on his way back. The offensive line is Joe Wrights. I can't even believe I forgot him. Wrights filled in very nicely
Mm.
last week or a couple weeks ago, and they're just way deeper in quality depth at that than they've been in years. And I don't
Mm.
mean just the past couple. I'm
Right.
talking years, like 6 or 8 years.
Mm.
But much better depth, and not just people at the spot, quality depth, to where they have guys that can fill in and really not skip too many beats. And they still have Khaled Holmes
Mm.
there, who was originally the starter, who
Yeah.
then was the backup. Now he's just somebody. We don't even know really what he's doing, and I don't think anybody does. But he's there, and he looked good when he played all 5 snaps of the preseason, and it's just a good thing to have
Mhm.
when you have 3 linemen on the inactive healthy list for games because you have so much quality depth at that position.
Yeah, that's huge. And I've criticized Ryan Grigson as much as anybody over the last couple of years, and this move, that move, but he nailed it with Mewhort. I mean, that was a guy that I thought was just a quality layer on. But he's never going to wow you. He's never
Right.
going to be amazing athletically. But sure, you put the guy in at guard. I mean, he's going to maul people. As Mauler is exactly the word I used to describe him in scouting reports. I mean, he's a guy who just loves the game of football. He'll play hard and physical all day long. He'll listen to coaching. He'll do whatever you tell him to do. He'll learn whatever position you want him at. He can has the versatility. I think he'd even learn center if
Hmm.
he needs to. I mean, he's got the ability to be able to do those things. He's got the size and strength and the mentality. That's overlooked a lot in the draft process, but the mentality you want from the position. I mean, there's a lot of good guards from this draft, and Muir's got the ability to be one of those and play any line position and really be pretty strong, I think. So I think that's definitely one of the bright spots with him. But you mentioned Trent Richardson, and I definitely want to talk about him because I know Steelers fans know him from his days at Cleveland, and
Hmm.
they definitely like to criticize him, like pretty much everybody does. And sure, I'm one of those people in a lot of ways. I mean, I admire the fact that Indianapolis traded a first round pick on him, and they are not going to let that thing go until they drain every bit of life they have out of it. And why not? You traded a first round pick for him, and I appreciate that. But do you think there's times maybe where Richardson's taking away opportunities and touches from Bradshaw, who has seen, I think, an increase in touches as the season's gone on? He's clearly proven to be the more dominant back. But you think there's times when Richardson's maybe seeing too many reps or too many touches, and really Bradshaw would be more effective in more of those situations that you see Richardson being used in?
You could say that that's a difficult question to answer, and the reason I say that is because they do use Trent as the feature back for the Colts. He's their starter. He's their and I saw a stat today, and I don't even remember exactly what it was, but something about that him and Ahmad Bradshaw have broken however many tackles that they've broken this year, and yards after contact, and they're in the top, I think top 6 or top 7 in the league in that regard. The one thing that makes a difference, and I think Trent, and I spoke on it earlier, Trent has been more decisive this year. He's hitting the holes immediately when they're open. Whether he dances a bit or gets lateral is another story because that happens too. But he's definitely doing his part, and I'll say that once he does see his opening and he's going for, he's heading north and south until he gets. Yeah, I'd like to see him truck somebody. To be quite honest with you,
Yeah.
I'm tired of watching him dance, especially when he gets 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. Lower your head and plow somebody because people are going to stop getting in front of you, and that's why they don't, because they know he's going to try to dance as soon as they get to him. You hit him in his legs, you may not get him down, but you're going to slow him down, then he's going to dance, and by the time he gets another 2 yards upfield, 5 or 6 other guys are going to be there to help you tackle him.
Right.
As far as taking carries away from Bradshaw, Bradshaw has been phenomenal this year.
Yeah.
But I be honest with you, I don't know that you see Bradshaw with this sort of production, and I'll say yards per carry production or something of that nature. When he with him being the feature back, if you put him as the feature back and let him carry the ball 25 times a game, I don't think you see this type of uh, you you don't see the same that you get with him of being somewhat of a change of speed back
Mm-hmm.
for the way that him. And in the passing game, they're using him a lot out of the backfield in the flats. He's already got more touchdowns than I think 3 of the top wide receivers in the league combined.
Right.
And I don't want to say that I think that he's taking away carries from him. It is interesting the way they dispense those carries, though. Uh, they're using a Bradshaw a lot more inside the red zone, uh, than they are Trent Richardson. Trent's doing well in the passing game as well. I really want to see him with a with 6 or 7 men in the box instead of 8. And that was one of my critiques on kind of trickled down to Luck. When he sees 8 guys in the box, he's not changing it to a running play or changing it out of a run, getting out of a run, play. He's sticking with it, and it was something that you just can't do with Trent. Trent's doing better. Trent's still not there yet. Ahmad Bradshaw is having more success because I think of the position that they're using him in, and because he's been so effective in the passing game. But he's got that extra gear that Trent doesn't have. You know, Trent gets in the open field and he's in fourth gear, and that's about as high as he gets. Bradshaw's got that fifth gear, and it shows. And it's definitely going to allow him to have those longer carries, which is pretty much the reason Donald Brown scored as many on his long runs from last season as he did. You know, he had that extra gear, and he could beat somebody at the end zone from the 30, whereas Trent can't. And nor do I think he would actually try. I think he would just try to dance around them and then hopefully, break some tackles. But you can only break so many tackles without it slowing you down significantly. It's a great. In the end, I love it though. It's a great 1-2 punch. I think Dan Herron is a fantastic third running back for this team. He goes north and south. He's a bit of a mixture between the two. He's kind of a bigger guy, not very tall, but stocky. He's built more like Bradshaw than Trent. Trent's basically a big ball with hair, and he's hard to bring down. So I really like their running game, and whether it's one guy or two guys, I really don't care as long as they're getting over 150 yards a game, from the position itself as opposed to from one guy or the other.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, I applaud the fact that Indianapolis has really kept, I think, a pretty balanced offense. And Pep Hamilton gets a lot of criticism, and sometimes I definitely understand that. I mean, his play calling can be suspect at times, but he stays with a balanced offensive approach, and I think that helps Andrew Luck out a lot. I think in the past the Colts maybe just Luck had to throw it a million times a game, and I think this year you don't have to see that. When I've watched the Colts, at least I've seen a really strong commitment to the run game, not just from the play calling, but I think from the offensive line. I think they've really taken it upon themselves to become an improved unit in that area, and I think it's really helped Indianapolis enjoy a really balanced approach and helped Andrew Luck. And now if he can begin to see the defense before plays, pre-snap like you're talking about, like he started to do better and better, I think that's going to really – I don't think this Colts offense is close to peaking is kind of my point here. I think that they've got more strides that they can take, and they're first in the league in terms of yards and things of that nature. So I think that they've still got progress that's going to be made. As Luck starts to see defenses pre-snap and audible into play selections that are much better for their attack, look out. I think that this Colts defense is the opportunity to be scary. And we've already seen them have success in the playoffs, so it's a good sign for them going downfield.
I agree. Speaking of playoffs, the Steelers have struggled a bit. They got into a game this past week where the Texans wanted to let them score 21 points in 2 minutes. And that was a good percentage of their scoring. So it kind of led me to think, they've had that game, they've had the game against Tampa Bay, but it's been largely very inconsistent. You really don't know what to expect from them. Getting blown out by 20 by the Ravens when the Ravens didn't even play that well in that game. It's not the normal Steelers that the rest of us are used to seeing, I guess, or expecting to see. If they can manage to beat the Colts on Sunday, does that make them legitimate playoff contenders? And do they have a chance with that starting a bit of a roll for them to win their division, the AFC North?
I mean, I think that if you ask a lot of fans and analysts, they would say, yeah. My perspective on the Steelers is probably not going to change whether they beat the Colts by 40 or lose by 40. They're just a team that has the ability to play anyway on any given Sunday. Nothing consistent, not really strong in any one area. I mean, one week they could throw for 350 yards. The next week, Ben could struggle to crack 100. And not because of Ben, play calling, the other receivers around him not performing up to standard, the offensive line letting him get pressured, him holding the ball too long. It could be any myriad of issues. It's not necessarily Ben's arm, although at times that's been suspect, but it's just a myriad of issues that surround the team. They're not well prepared for games, so that's a big problem. They come in and they play to the level of their opponents. That's a big problem. You saw them against Tampa Bay. Never should have lost that game. You saw him against Cleveland the first time. Never should have let him back in the game. Second time, never should have gotten crushed. Cleveland's not on your talent level. They had a great game plan. They executed flawlessly. I applaud them for what they did, but 8 completions from a quarterback can't beat you in an NFL game in today's day and age. You just can't let it happen, and they let the big plays happen that killed them. I give the defense credit. They've stepped up, at least in the second half against Houston. I'll talk about the Steelers' offense, but I'm not proud of much what they did offensively against the Texans. I think the defense stepped up, and that's the main thing. People look at, they cured the red zone woes. Well, not really. It's pretty easy when you have 3 cracks from inside the 5-yard line. Law of averages basically states that you're going to score at some point. So not really getting thrilled about all that. But I was impressed with how the defense stepped up. I mean, the defense, and people like to criticize Dick LeBeau now, and they're starting to say he should hang it up. And I'm not disagreeing necessarily. I think LeBeau has to do a better job of adjusting to what offenses are showing him. But the Steelers' defense is young in a lot of areas and simply not very talented in a lot of areas. I mean, what are you supposed to do when you have an aging William Gay? Now, like, Taylor's injured, but he's aging and he's getting worse every game that he plays. A complete draft bust in Cortez Allen, and now he's getting paid tons of money to be one of your top cornerbacks. He can't even perform to that level. A guy who may not have made an NFL roster had Pittsburgh not signed him, and Bryce McCain is now starting over Cortez Allen. And McCain's played well. I won't deny that or take that away from him, but at the same time, I think, look at what LeBeau's had to work with. Mike Mitchell clearly can't read routes. His route recognition's poor. His positioning's poor. He is absolutely going to jump at the first thing the quarterback shows him with his eyes or with a pump fake. Going to be out of position. Paul Mull has always been an in-the-box type of safety. Before, in the past, he had the speed to be able to recover, and he really guessed well a lot of the time. Sometimes he didn't, and he got beat on it, but when he did guess right, it's what made him look so good, and he was very good at it. He's still pretty good at guessing, but he's definitely lost a bit of the speed that made him the elite player he was. He was really able to recover, and that was always his best quality, along with, obviously, his work inside the box. Steelers still play him in the box all the time. You'll see Troy and Polamalu line up inside the box. Doesn't really have the speed to be able to recover. It's one of the reasons they brought in Mike Mitchell a lot faster than Ryan Clark, who was with the team last year. So they're hoping that Mitchell can kind of cover that ground. But he's been a definite disappointment to this point. And so not going to go into too many specifics, but if you look across the linebacking core, Jason Worlds, just a guy. I mean, you talk a lot about giving him a big contract. He's not going to get that. Just a guy. 8 sacks last year. Most of the time when he gets a sack, he's beating a tight end or a running back in pass protection. He can school those guys. Give him an average offensive tackle, I bet he struggles against Goster Cherilus. As average as Goster's been, or below average, I bet he struggles to get pressure on the quarterback against Goster. Occasionally you'll see Jarvis Jones or Arthur Moats, and Jones is obviously injured now, make something happen, but they're just guys. Jarvis Jones is a bust. I mean, he's never going to be what they think he's going to be. And maybe you won't find a lot of other Steelers analysts or fans that will agree with that, but that's how I feel about Jones. At this point, I feel like we've had enough time to evaluate him thoroughly enough to say not a game changer, not a guy that's going to ever show the strength that's needed to overwhelm an offensive tackle, not enough bend in the hips laterally to really be able to work around them, I don't think, to the quarterback. So just a guy, in my opinion, and Lawrence Timmons is a good player, but when you're constantly getting blocked because you don't have the lineman in front of you to keep blocks off you as an inside linebacker, especially in a 3-4 defense, that's a really tough thing to overcome, even if you're a good inside linebacker, which Timmons is a good inside linebacker. He'll have bad games where he looks totally out of it mentally, and he'll have good games too. I'm excited about Sean Spence coming back from 2 major knee surgeries. He's really made a nice recovery, and he's been a really nice part of the defense, and he's gotten better each week as he's had to play in place of Ryan Shazier being out. Chance Shazier could play. He didn't practice today. That's a little bit disappointing, and a lot of Steelers fans are hoping he'd be ready for this week, but chance he plays, but probably not. So Indianapolis will probably see Sean Spence and Lawrence Timmons a lot. No idea why James Harrison's back on this team. He's absolute garbage. He's got no bend, and all he's looking to do is sack the quarterback every time he gets the ball. I mean, anytime you want to run delayed handoff, he's going to go right to the quarterback, and you can run right by him. So I think that you look at their defense across the whole, there's just not a lot of impressive guys, whereas the offense, that's not the story at all. And against Houston, no excuse for not producing as long as they did. Am I glad they converted in the red zone? Sure, absolutely. I mean, do I think that a lot of that's just the fact that Houston's really bad red zone defense, and they've struggled a lot of times aligning, and Roethlisberger did a good job. He audibles Bell out wide, gets him in a mismatch where Swearinger fails to pick him up, and I think Cushing should have actually bumped out and covered the inside receiver there and bumped out Jonathan Joseph to the outside. But he recognized the mismatch and he made a good play. It's a good job by Roethlisberger. He's been criticized a lot, including by Heinz Ward for pre-snap recognition and being able to align the offense and call the right plays at the line of scrimmage. He loves to run the no-huddle, give him the opportunity to call plays, and he did a good job audibling in that one. So he's shown an improvement in that area. Good to see in the red zone. Can they mount a drive and finish it in the red zone? That's still something we really haven't seen. I mean, Antonio Brown did catch that touchdown last week, even though it was overruled. I mean, pictures clearly showed that he was in bounds. So I think that there's some good things from the offense, but everything just looks so hard. And that's my thing with the Steelers. It shouldn't be as hard as they make it. And I just think that every time they have the ball, nothing really comes easy when it should in terms of finishing the drive. You rarely see them just march it straight down on a team, pound it into the end zone, and boom. Like they're back playing defense, and you can just tell they're a confident unit offensively. Just seems like things are falling apart at the seams always at some point during the drive, even if they just had a really strong play, and you followed it up by 3.5 after that. And it's a strange problem that they've had for years now, and a lot of it's the play calling. Todd Haley doesn't get them in a good rhythm. And Haley obviously is the most hated man in Pittsburgh. It's definitely not all his fault, but I mean, a lot of that's pretty valid. He's definitely struggled at times. But, yeah, it's a team that if they beat the Colts on Sunday, I kind of circumvented around your question there, long-winded, but if they beat the Colts on Sunday, that's a huge quality win. I mean, you got the opportunity to move to 5-3. Obviously, the AFC North is struggling. I mean, Cleveland is still going to be Cleveland at the end of the day. Cincinnati, man, they look like they've fallen apart a little bit. I mean, you guys took them apart. I think that they've definitely got some issues that are exposed. Andy Dalton's definitely just a guy without A.J. Green. They maybe get him back this week. Got a big game against Baltimore. So if Cincinnati can win that game, Pittsburgh's got an opportunity with a win to be right up there at the top of the division. So it's an opportunity for them for sure. They can't take it lightly. They typically come into games against better competition and match it for a while at least. I expect Indianapolis to win the game. I'll say that. I definitely think that they're the better team, and it'll be close for a while, but they'll pull ahead in the second half, I think. But if Steelers find a way to win the game, they're in the playoff picture, and you have a really weak schedule. I mean, you play the AFC South and you play the NFC South. The NFC South, they don't know who they're going to win that thing. They already beat Carolina, who is the number one team in that division right now. So, I mean, definitely you got a bright future when you look ahead to the rest of the schedule. But, I mean, you lose 4 games last year against sub-500 teams. You lose 4 games the year before against sub-500 teams. You end up 8-8 both seasons. You win all 4 of those games, or even 2 of those games. You're 10-6. You're in the playoffs easily both seasons. They don't do it. I don't really see any reason to expect them to not lose to a below-average team at least a couple more times the rest of the season, even though below-average teams fill their schedule the rest of the way. That's my thoughts on Pittsburgh. I really don't think until there's significant changes at the top, there'll be much reason for an expectation change in terms of what the team's able to bring to the table in terms of a postseason run, I think.
Okay. Kind of feeding off of that a little bit, speaking about Haley and Big Ben's ability at the line of scrimmage, they know that the Colts linebackers, especially Jackson and McNary, are struggling to take care of their coverage responsibilities with the backs out of the backfield and the tight ends. I think the games that they've clearly excelled are when they're basically against a one tight end team. And the games that they've had struggles with are teams with a dual tight end set. How do you think that? Do you think Roethlisberger can go up and use Le'Veon Bell to his best ability, I guess, so to speak, to get him some plays out in the flats? As dangerous as he was against the Texans with the ball in his hand in space?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, for as many criticisms as I might have of Haley, I think it's one of the things he's been able to do really well, is consistently put Bell in matchups and in situations where he's going to win. And I think that's been one of the best part of the Steelers' offense. I'm not sure why that kind of disappears around the red zone, but definitely between the 20s, he's done a great job of getting Bell the football in areas where he's going to win. And that's a credit to Bell, too. I mean, there's not many linebackers in the league who are going to be able to cover him. And so that's an advantage for Pittsburgh. I think Roethlisberger will do a good job of moving him in a position where he'll be able to win battles as well as Haley. I think that in terms of multiple tight end sets, it's not something Pittsburgh does a ton of. I mean, Matt Spates, their second tight end, and you probably don't know that name because you're probably no reason to. I mean, Spates not much of a threat either as a blocker or as a receiver. So Steelers don't typically go to that lineup. But in fact, I think you'll see fullback Will Johnson if they run that direction at all. But I think you'll see more often than not a single back look with just Bell and relying on the five linemen and Heath Miller mainly to do most of the blocking, if not getting Bell in space where he can be able to use it. They run a lot of draws and delays in really puzzling situations sometimes, but that's what they rely on a lot. So a lot of Bell's carries come from those types of situations. But honestly, Bell's not getting a ton of carries. I think only one game this year is he over 20 carries. He only had 12 the other day against Houston, but 8 catches, and they get him his touches anyway, and they'll put him in situations where he's able to succeed, I think.
Yeah, he's a dangerous guy. I think, I think the Colts excelled last week because I think they knew what we knew as we start breaking down the games. And, one of the stats that stuck out like a sore thumb to me was that basically they had targeted, that Dalton had targeted his tight ends and running backs over 60% of his throws for the season. And that included games with A.J. Green. That's a crazy amount.
Yeah.
That it really doesn't. I mean, yeah, that's the true definition of dink and dunk offense right there. And the big difference is, I mean, Bell is probably better in space in my opinion than Gio Bernard.
Yeah.
I would say Bernard might be a better runner between the tackles, but Bernard needs Bell needs just the littlest amount of space to shake, and if he can get that, then he's extremely hard to bring down and to stop. I think that's and this will go in line with one of your thoughts with the biggest weakness for the Colts team. The biggest weakness is their middle linebackers in coverage.
Yeah.
They brought in Sergio Brown to take over LaRon Landry's role with his suspension, and he's been fantastic. Mike Adams has been fantastic at safety this year, doing great in coverage, great in run support. Their true weakness is the passing defense with DeQuell Jackson and Josh McNary. Jarrell Freeman coming back is a huge lift to this team in coverage. But other than that, and I'll be honest with you, at this point, I mean, they've played so well. You can see little cracks and stuff like that. But if you're going weakness, that's really the only weakness I see, other than the fact that you're not rushing for 160 yards a game. And, you would think that they were with the time of possession that they have. And so on and so forth. But they're that middle linebacker spot there that McNary and DeQuell Jackson are using in coverage is a huge issue, and it's probably it's not only their biggest weakness, but it's their weakness that they're going to continue to be poked and prodded at. They're going to get thrown at a lot. People are throwing at Toller a lot. Toller's standing up. A lot of people will bash Toller. A lot of people will say this or that about him. He does have good moments, and then you see, a ball go over his head, and the receiver's way past him, and you just kind of like, what? What was he doing? You can't read a ball that quick, so sometimes it's hard to see, some of his knucklehead moves, but over the bigger picture, he's doing a great job. So if there's one negative area, it's just the middle linebacker spots in coverage. Their run support's been pretty good, DeQuell Jackson especially, and they're throwing in a lot of stunts with him coming through the middle, and it looks good in that regard. But coverage, there's a real weakness there.
Right. And I think that's something that it's funny that you just say that right off the bat, because I think that's exactly what I would have said. And obviously you're much more aware of the Colts situation than I am, but I think that's what I would have said about them. I think Jarrell Freeman coming back, we didn't really talk about that. It's going to be a real nice boost. But like you said, those guys have played well, but at the same time, McNary, Jackson, coverage never going to be their strong suit. Just not going to be the case. So they'll always be a little susceptible in that area, which won't always expose them. And you thought it would have maybe exposed them more against a team like Cincinnati, but like you said, Vontae Davis, pre-show when we were talking, he said Vontae Davis lit up Bernard a couple times. He didn't want the ball after that, so that definitely helped out Indianapolis a good bit. I think Bell's going to be a guy that isn't going to be taken out of contention so easily. I mean, I think all around he just has the ability. The only thing Bell really lacks is elite breakaway speed. He's not going to drop the ball very often. He's definitely going to be hard to bring down in the open field. He's extremely elusive. His feet are really quick in short areas. It makes him really tough to bring down in situations like that. But honestly, it's going to be a great matchup. It's going to be one of the better matchups to watch. I think whether they try and cover him with safety, whether they try and cover him in the corner, whether every time he's flexed out wide, whether we see the Colts in a nickel package a lot, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how they try and defend that, especially because the Steelers don't really have many receivers past Antonio Brown. I mean, obviously you're going to talk about best matchup of the day might be Antonio Brown and Vontae Davis. We haven't even gotten to that. I mean, Davis is playing as well as any corner in the league. He's been phenomenal. And I think that if you look across the board, Toller's going to have a good game, I think. I mean, there's nobody really to threaten him. Marcus Wheaton really appears to digress. I mean, Todd Haley can get really weird with his usage of receivers sometimes, and Wheaton had a bad game, maybe an off game with Roethlisberger, but his snap counts decreased. You see Martavis Bryant and Lance Moore in there a lot more. Justin Brown, who was like getting all the snaps at the beginning of the year, even over Lance Moore, is now not even active in place of Darius Hayward Bay, and you guys know about that train wreck.
Oh boy!
And he was on the hands team. The hands team at the end of the game against the Texans. Why would he be on the hands team?
Yeah, because he didn't have any.
Right, exactly. So
he thought it was the hands line. He was looking for hands.
He thought he could get some out there, but
right.
It's a situation where Wheaton is, I still think, the second or third best receiver on the team. But you've got to look for ways to use Martavis Bryant. When a guy makes an impact and he has an opportunity to make a play and he makes one, he deserves to be rewarded with the opportunity to make more plays in the same capacity. And so I think he's going to try and stretch the field. I think they're going to take their shots. Like you said, Mike Adams has been great this year, and that's been a huge pickup for the Colts to be able to have him playing at a high level, especially with LaRon Landry and the PED issues that nobody saw coming.
Nobody. Would have never guessed.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some good matchups when the Steelers have the football. I think Indianapolis is going to score a lot of points. But if the Steelers can win their one-on-one matchups, we could see a nice little shootout. But I think, honestly, Steelers are going to have to win a couple of one-on-one battles. I think Bell's going to have to find ways to make big plays. Antonio Brown's going to have to find a way to beat Vontae Davis. He's had success against every single cornerback in the league, every game he's played in for the last season and a half now. I mean, the evidence of the 23 straight games with 5 catches and over 50 yards suggests that too. But when you're taking apart corners like Lardarius Webb and Jimmy Smith for Baltimore, and when you're taking apart a corner like Joe Hayden consistently every time you face him, you're a guy who can beat anybody in the league. But Vontae Davis is playing as well as anybody in the league. So that's a matchup I'm thrilled about. I think when the Steelers have the ball, I'm really anxious to see if they can win those matchups because I think there's little question in my mind Indianapolis is going to put up a lot of points if they can not turn the ball over, not shoot themselves in the foot. But can the Steelers avoid shooting themselves in the foot? Can they finally get in a track meet with an offense and match them? Because I think their defense will try, but I think they'll fail ultimately on Sunday. I just don't think they have the talent to be able to hang with Indianapolis' weapons. But can the Steelers keep it close when they have the football? Can they match Indianapolis point for point? And then it comes down to turnovers, little things, mistakes, drops, penalties. Steelers haven't done well in that department in most of their games this year, but when they do well, they're 3-0. So I think those are big things to look for as we look at the matchup going into Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game regardless. I mean, it's at Heinz Field, not exactly in the comfort zone for the Colts or Andrew Luck, so to speak, but they've done surprisingly well on the road, and I think it's a good playoff primer, so to speak, for them to have that sort of weather. They're not going to be in snow or anything like that, but it'll be outside, and it'll be cool, and it'll be windy, and it'll be something the Colts need to get ready for the playoffs. Again, just sitting here with Jon Ledyard. Steelers lead writer and AFC North Division manager for Pro Football Spot. Go visit profootballspot.com. It's a forum-based website. You can sign up for free, become a member, talk to any of our writers. Everybody's more than happy to help you out. If you have any questions, tons of writers, tons of great content. Get out there and check it out. John, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, absolutely, at JLedge, all lowercase, letter J, and then the word Ledge, PFS, all capitalized for the PFS part. On Twitter, you definitely can talk to me on there. Love to answer any questions. Lots of good Steelers followers on there and interactions on there. Definitely check out my articles on Pro Football Spot. I tweet them out and search my name on Facebook if you want and find me on there. You'll see me tweet out a lot of links to articles. Join pretty much any Steeler group on Facebook. You'll see my work and the other Steelers writers that we have at Pro Football Spot. Our work on there, do a lot of good work. Pro Football Spot, man, it's a site that's definitely on the rise, growing quickly, putting together really good teams, really talented writers. Podcasts are starting to grow, video casts, Google Hangouts. It's exciting to see the direction it's going. And if you're a fan watching this right now, I definitely encourage you to get on board. There's some big things happening here. Register for free. Heck, it takes 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Interact on there, and you've got a ton of writers who love their teams and are passionate about football, passionate about writing, passionate about bringing you news and really unbiased opinions, I think, on team matters and things like that are willing to sit and discuss with you and comment on Twitter, on articles, and in the forums. Just a special thing you don't get in a lot of websites nowadays with the big names and things like that. You don't get that interaction with writers and media members. So I think you have that opportunity at profootballspot.com. So take advantage of it. I hope to see you guys on there and talk to you guys on there. And Matt, thank you so much for having me on the show, man. It's been a ton of fun. Talking about this matchup. Look forward to tweeting at you, maybe talking a little trash during the game. This should be a great matchup. I hope it lives up to the feeling we have in our mind.
Hey, absolutely, man. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's going to be a good matchup. Colts and Steelers this Sunday, 1 o'clock at Heinz Field. If you're not watching that, what's that? Oh, it is 4:25, I believe.
I know it's rare for either of us to have a 4 o'clock game.
Always at 1 o'clock. I don't even know how. I think I even wrote that wrong.
It's the only 4 o'clock game of the year for the Steelers.
Yeah. So, hey, again, John, thanks for coming up. Again, profootballspot.com, Spot Colts, and Spot Steelers on Twitter. J Ledge, JLEDGEPFS. Check them out. John, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely, no problem, Matt. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to Spot Colts Radio. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. Be on the lookout for our AFC roundtable. We'll have several writers and several contributors in here, and we'll all be giving you what we think the AFC playoff picture is going to look like. Again, I'm Matt Danely, your host, and this was Spot Colts Radio. Thanks. We'll talk to you guys soon.